Imagine for a second that you're listening to a classic song, one you've known your whole life. You know every word, every note.
It's just part of your DNA at that point.
Exactly. But then somebody hands you the master recording, and they isolate just one background vocal, something you barely noticed before, and they just push that fader all the way up.
And suddenly you realize, wait a minute.
This background singer, he was the lead vocalist the whole time, and you can never unhear it.
That is a fantastic analogy, and it's so disorienting, isn't it? Because once you hear it that way, you can never go back to the original mix.
You can't. And that is exactly what we are dealing with today. We're looking at what might be the ultimate literary remix. We're talking about James by Percival Everett.
Right, his reimagining of Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but this time the microphone is passed to the enslaved man, Jim.
And even calling it a retelling feels, I don't know, a little small for what Everett actually does here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this book has just dominated the conversation. We're talking the 2024 National Book Award, the Kirkus Prize, and the 2025 Pulitzer.
It's a clean sweep.
It is. The Pulitzer Board called it an accomplished reconsideration that shows the, and I'm quoting here, absurdity of racial supremacy. And that word absurdity, I think that's going to come up a lot today.
I think so too.
Yep.
But let's pause on that premise for just a second, because I can hear some people thinking, okay, a remix of a classic. Is this just trying to fix history?
Sure. Is it preachy?
Yeah. Is it going to feel preachy?
Yeah.
Because that can go wrong really fast.
It's a very valid concern. I mean, you're touching Huck Finn, that's hallowed ground. But Everett's been really clear about this. He's not trying to correct Twain.
Okay.
He's trying to expand the frame. Twain wrote what Huck, a young white kid in that era could see and understand. But there was so much he was just incapable of seeing. Everett is just filling in those gaps.
So how does he start filling them in? The book opens and we meet Jim, but he's not Jim.
He's not. He calls himself James, which is the very first act of reclamation. Jim is the name he's given. James is the name he owns.
And the plot kicks off in a pretty familiar way. He finds out his enslaver, Miss Watson, is selling him down the river to New Orleans.
Right. But Everett immediately raises the stakes. He paints it with this devastating clarity. Being sold isn't just a change of scenery.
No.
It is a permanent separation from his wife, Sadie, and his daughter, Lizzie. It's the complete destruction of his family. And that's the engine for everything that follows.
So he runs, he ends up on the raft, he meets Huck. But here's where that remix slider gets pushed all the way up. In Twain's book, Jim is, well, he's kind, but he's superstitious, he's simple.
He's not exactly presented as an intellectual.
Not at all. How does Everett handle that?
This gets to the book's central claim. Everett's argument is that the historical Jim, and by extension enslaved people of that time, had this incredibly deep, complex inner life that white people just couldn't or wouldn't see.
So in this book, James is...
He's a philosopher.
Metaphorically.
No, I mean almost literally. He has these fever dream, hallucinatory conversations with Enlightenment thinkers. Voltaire, John Locke.
Wait, hold on. While he's on the raft, he's a fugitive slave in the 1840s debating John Locke. Doesn't that stretch believability a little bit?
It does feel jarring at first, I'll give you that. But think about the why behind it. Everett is showing us that James is wrestling with the exact same ideas of liberty and the social contract that America's founders were.
Ah, I see.
He's having the debate from the outside, from the position of someone who's been excluded from that contract. It completely shifts him from a passive victim to an active intellectual.
Okay, that makes sense. But then, if he's this smart, why does he act the way he does in front of Huck and other white people? You know, the Lordy Massa Huck stuff.
Well, this is maybe the most brilliant claim in the whole book. Everett calls it the mask.
The mask.
He argues that the simplicity, the ignorance, it wasn't real. It was a performance. It was a survival strategy.
He's faking it.
It's linguistic code switching of the highest order. There's this one scene that is just chilling where James is running a secret school for enslaved children, but he's not teaching them how to speak properly.
He's teaching them the opposite.
Exactly. He's teaching them what he calls incorrect grammar.
Incorrect grammar. Break that down for me.
He's literally coaching them. Don't say I am, say I is. Drop your verbs, slur your words. He's teaching them that if you sound too smart, you'll be seen as a threat, and a threat gets eliminated.
So sounding dumb is a shield against death.
Precisely. It's a constant high-stakes performance. If you break character, you die. And when you realize that, you can't read Twain's original the same way. All those moments where Jim seems goofy, Everett is saying, no, look closer, he's playing a role to keep himself alive.
It totally changes the dynamic on the raft. It's not a buddy comedy. It's one kid having an adventure and one man acting like a sidekick because his life depends on it.
Right. And it also changes how we see the villains. You remember the two con men, the Duke and the King?
Yeah, the comic relief.
Well, there's not much comedy here. There's a scene where the Duke is beating James, and he says something that just, it lays bare the whole psychological engine of slavery. He says, he ain't no proper people. He don't feel pain like we do.
He don't feel pain like we do.
Mm.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
That's the whole justification right there.
It's the necessary lie. You have to believe that to do what they're doing. The book shows that dehumanization isn't just an attitude. It's an economic tool.
This is so heavy, but I want to try and use a framework to unpack it a little more. This idea of the Adlerian lens, moving from information to knowledge to understanding and then wisdom.
Oh, that's a perfect lens for this book.
So if we start with knowledge, the basic fact, the book shows us the reality of the era. Families being sold apart, the constant threat of violence.
Right, the whippings, the lynchings. We have the data, the historical record. That's the knowledge layer.
But understanding is the why. Why did this system work the way it did? And for me, I think the book's answer comes down to a single object.
The pencil.
The pencil, yes. Talk about that.
It's this huge symbol. James manages to get a hold of a Faber pencil and Daniel Decatur Emmett's notebook.
And why is a simple pencil so dangerous?
Because literacy was a crime, but the understanding is deeper than that. James realizes that the person who holds the pencil controls the story. If he can write his own story, he stops being a character in Huck's adventure.
He becomes the protagonist of his own. The pencil is his weapon?
It's the ultimate weapon. The tension, every time he takes it out to write, it's more intense than when he's running from slave catchers. Because writing is an existential threat to the whole system.
If the farm equipment starts writing philosophy,
The whole thing collapses. The lie is exposed.
okay, so that's understanding. What's the wisdom? What does James do with that power?
The wisdom, what you might call practical wisdom or phronesis, is in how he deals with Huck.
Explain that. Because if I were James, knowing what I knew, and this kid is a product of the system that wants me dead, I'm not sure it'd be very kind.
And that would be completely understandable. But James shows this as incredible wisdom. He protects Huck repeatedly. But he's not doing it out of some blind loyalty. He's holding two opposing truths at once.
Which are?
Truth one, Huck is a representative of the oppressor class. Truth two, Huck is also just a child who's a victim of abuse himself. James has the wisdom to hold on to his own empathy, his humanity, even when the entire world is trying to beat it out of him.
He refuses to become a monster to fight monsters.
That's it, exactly. Which is a good transition to test the ethics of this world. Let's run it against, say, the golden rule.
Do unto others. I mean, it seems obvious that slavery fails this test.
It fails spectacularly. But the book highlights how it's about the reciprocity of dignity. The white characters demand everything from James' labor, honesty, respect, and give nothing back. Even worse, they demand he perform stupidity to protect their own egos.
It's an ego tax, a soul tax.
It is. And then if you look at the U.S. Constitution's preamble,
Establish justice, promote the general welfare.
the book just takes a wrecking ball to those promises. No justice for James. The general welfare is promoted by destroying the welfare of his family. But where the book gets really interesting is its critique of the free states.
Right, because the classic story is South bad, North good, just get to the North.
And Everett just refuses to let the North off the hook that easily. When James does encounter the so-called free states, he realizes the blessings of liberty are, well, they're not there for him.
So it's a different kind of oppression.
It's systemic, not regional. He may not be in chains, but he's not a citizen. He's not seen as an equal. The book suggests the rot wasn't in a few bad states, it was in the country's foundation.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
Mhm.
Let's pivot to the book's structure. Does it
Yeah.
all hold together logically?
Well, there's one core argument that I think is completely airtight. The slaveholders claim that black people are naturally unintelligent, right?
Right.
Yet they pass laws that punish black literacy with death.
You don't make a law banning your dog from reading Shakespeare?
You don't. The ban itself proves they know the capability is there, it's a lie, and the law proves it's a lie. The book uses that contradiction perfectly.
Okay, but on the flip side, are there any weaknesses? Any criticisms?
There is one that some readers have pointed out, the over-explanatory trap.
Meaning, James explains things a bit too much.
Yeah, that sometimes he sounds less like a man on the run and more like a professor like Percival Everett explaining the book's themes to the reader. The subtext can become the text.
A bit of show don't tell
A
violation.
little bit. But I'd argue it's a deliberate choice, a trade-off. Everett seems to prioritize clarity over narrative subtlety. He is not going to risk you missing the point about James's intellect.
That's a fair point. Sometimes you have to be direct. And speaking of direct choices, we have to talk about the ending. Without spoilers, the exorcism.
Oh, this is maybe the most powerful choice in the book. Anyone who remembers the end of Huck Finn knows it gets weird.
Tom Sawyer shows up and it turns into a complete farce.
A total farce. Tom knows Jim has already been freed, but he doesn't tell him. He makes him a prisoner again for weeks just so they can play these cruel escape games.
It's horrific. Jim is just a prop for Tom's adventure game.
He's a prop. And Everett performs what I can only call a literary exorcism. He cuts those final 12 chapters.
Still throws him out.
He refuses to write them. He refuses to allow James to be a prop in someone else's game. He gives James an ending worthy of his own agency. The question isn't, will Tom Sawyer save him? It's, will James take his own freedom?
That is an incredibly powerful act of narrative reclamation.
It is. It restores his dignity completely.
So as we start to land this plane, what's the final verdict on James?
Well, the strengths are just undeniable. It recenters Black agency in a story we all thought we knew. It's smart, it's thrilling, it's heartbreaking. It shows you how little you actually understood about the original.
Any unresolved questions? Anything that feels underdeveloped?
I think the critique of the Free States is brilliant, but could have been explored more. We only get a taste. And then there's the big meta question.
Which is?
Who owns these stories? You have a Black author in 2024 rewriting a white author from 1884. What does that mean for the canon? Does this replace Huck Finn?
I feel like you have to read them together now. They're in dialogue.
They absolutely have to be. It's a conversation across 140 years.
Okay, let's wrap this up. Give us the summary for the listener who wants to really get why this book is so important.
James matters because it forces you to look into the silent plights of our history and realize that silence was not emptiness. It was a strategy for survival. By giving James the pencil, Everett exposes the profound absurdity of a system that demanded brilliance from Black people while legally denying they had minds. It's not a retelling, it's a restoration.
And what are the three key takeaways, the ideas that should stick with us?
Okay, number one, duality as survival. That mask of ignorance wasn't a personality trait. It was exhausting, high-stakes labor performed every single day.
The pencil is power. Literacy wasn't just a skill, it was rebellion. The simple act of writing your name was a declaration of war on the entire system. And number three, the hypocrisy of the good guys. The book shows that it wasn't just the overt villains. The entire structure, even well-meaning people like Huck, were part of the dehumanizing machine.
Writing your name was a declaration of war. That's going to stick with me.
It's an incredibly potent idea.
All right, before we go, leave us with one final thought, something for everyone to chew on.
You know, we call Huck Finn the great American novel, and for good reason, but reading James leaves you with this one nagging question. What does it say about America that it took us 140 years to hear the voice of the man sitting right there on the raft next to Huck? And who else, in all our other great stories, is still sitting there, waiting for a pencil?
Who else is waiting for a pencil? That is the question. Thank you for this. This was an incredible breakdown.
My pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for listening. Keep reading, keep questioning, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.